Coming up this week on Success Won't Come Calling.
I've got to a point now where I feel quite confident in my work, like that I could hold my own against any artist in the world. And it's not being big-headed, it's just being proud of what I do and what I create, because you're getting everything of me in your art, in your painting. You know, like, you're not just getting a painting, you're probably getting 15 years of addiction and battle and all of that. But then you're getting all my happiness and my positivity that I've got now. All that's going into that painting.
Hello, friends. Simon Gibson here, podcast SWCC. And if you want to be better tomorrow than you were today, you have made a truly excellent decision today. You just heard a few words from my guest this week, who is John Charles, who is my favourite artist and who's got an absolutely fascinating story. And I'm going to introduce John in a bit more detail very shortly. But in the meantime, Jacob, how are you, sir?
Doing well, alive and kicking.
Good. I had a tooth out this week.
Oh man,
I know, it was terrible.
Wasn't a wisdom tooth though? I heard
No,
that
it was one at the back which had roots on it, like a pine though. Seriously,
Did they
like
give you the
tree.
anaesthetic?
Yeah, 2 lots of anaesthetic.
Oh,
And I still felt like I'd been punched by the
it's
time I got home.
half your face goes numb, doesn't it? It's very weird.
I know. I've had loads of good feedback about Deliso's episode last week. He was amazing, wasn't he?
I couldn't stop laughing at that clip about when he made fun of the prophet.
Oh, yeah, in Malawi. Yeah. That was amazing, wasn't it? But you know what? When I watched it back, he said something which sort of I didn't grip onto during the actual episode, but it really sort of resonated with me because I asked Deliso what the next 5 years hold for him, and he made clear how ambitious he was in terms of his work as a comedian, as a radio presenter. But he also made this point that if he doesn't get to where he wants to be in 5 years, he's not going to let that depress him or eat him up. And I'm going to use that theme today as my starter for 10, because I'm quite an ambitious person. Because I'm a CEO of a group, because I've got shareholders who rely on me in terms of driving our businesses forward, because I've got a team of 150 people across a number of continents who also rely upon me. I have to have that ambition and drive. And I want to just share something with you that happened to me just before COVID, which sort of put a bit of a hurdle in the way of that ambition. And it was this. We were due to enter the sector, in the market rather, in the US in around May or June 2020. So there's me last March booking my flight to LA International and getting ready to do the final interviewing of our team in the US, to get the office space set up, to get the system set up, all the operational sort of stuff. And then COVID struck. So my flight to LA got cancelled and I rebooked it this morning. Woo. So that feels, it does feel like a little bit of an achievement. But so what's basically going to happen now is where I'm going to be flying out to the US to do all the final bits next February. We will be starting our businesses in the US very shortly thereafter. I'm aiming by about April or May. So it's put us back by a couple of years, this pandemic. And when COVID happened, I felt really frustrated by this because it was something which was out of my control, which got in my way and got in the way of the work I do leading our group, the Aspiring Group. But do you know what? When I thought about Deliso's words from last week, I was thinking, well, I got myself really frustrated then. And that frustration stayed for quite a while. I mean, I never would have predicted it would have been as long as 2 years, but so it's been. But I really just had an attack of reality and thought, how bad is it really that I haven't achieved what I wanted for another 2 years? And it's not actually that bad. And I think there's something there that I just wanted to sort of knock about in terms of, it's great to be ambitious and it's great to want to achieve goals and progress and maybe earn more money, maybe get a greater amount of academic achievement, perhaps to learn more, perhaps to progress more in sport or in anything that you want to do with your life. But if you don't get there, I do think it's important that delay or that failure doesn't get in the way of you enjoying your life now. And I thought that was something which Daliso said, which was really striking, and it's something that I'm going to take forward into my life moving on. Because when we start our business in the US in 6 months or so time, I don't think I'm in much worse of a position than if COVID hadn't happened. So my start of a 10 this week is, if you've got goals, if you've got things you want to achieve, you should be ambitious and you should drive forward to achieve them. But if you don't quite get there in the time that you allowed, it's not the end of the world. You mustn't let yourself get too down. You mustn't beat yourself up, because you're not actually in that bad a position for some delay or some failure. You just learn from it. So thank you, Daliso Chimbonda. That's my start of a 10. Now, what a fantastic episode we've got for you this week, friends. My guest this week is John Charles. He is my favorite artist, and he's got a fascinating life. Just talking about John's art, first of all, and we're going to have all of his Instagram page, his website, all on our own socials. I would advise everybody who's watching and listening to get on those platforms and take a look at the quality of his work. It really is quite remarkable. It's unique. John's got a style which is very much true to him. And I believe that he's one of the real artistic talents in the UK at this moment in time. So I'm going to be talking with John lots about his work and his plans for the future. John's also had his fair share of struggle in the past. For many years, John suffered with alcohol and drug addiction. He's incredibly honest about those difficult years for him and his family, what he learned in the process, the ups and downs he had to live through, and how they've all contributed to the man he is today and to the quality of work that he does. I'm going to be asking John about how his interest in art first started at school. Also, I'm going to be asking him about how his challenges with drugs and alcohol first started and how his life developed. We're going to be talking about when John hit rock bottom, but then most importantly, we're going to be talking about when he climbed back up from that position to the really fantastic one he's in today, both in terms of his work, in terms of his family. He's in great shape. He was in fantastic form during our conversation. He's an absolute joy as a human being, and he's a fabulous artist, as you will see. So without further ado, please do relax and enjoy this week's episode of Success Won't Come Calling with me, Simon Gibson, and my guest, John Charles. John, good to see you. Thanks for doing this, mate.
Pleasure.
It's really good to see you. You look fantastic, man. When I walked in, I thought you had an Everton top on, so I thought it was going to be a short interview. But
no, nothing to do with Everton with me. It's Blackburn, but it's these are the basketball colours. But I don't even follow basketball. I just follow the jerseys.
Yeah, fair enough. And we do guest rider on the podcast, and we're keeping it nice and simple, old school. What are we drinking?
We're going to drink a bit of English tea with a sugar. It was I don't understand why you would give a kid this, but my nan always used to make me a cup of tea with sugar. So
that was before sugar was bad, though, wasn't it? Back then, in the 80s, sugar was fine, and pasta was healthy. My nan used to say, "We're not having chips tonight. We're having pasta," as if it was like, this is like the cutting edge of premium health.
Yeah, like my nan used to fry like lamb chops in the blood. In the pan.
Oh, man.
It was disgusting, honest to God. But yeah, let me have a little sip of my tea.
Yeah, please. I'm going to do it as well. It gets a bit of oat milk in here. You don't have dairy.
No, don't touch dairy. Not anymore. But
and is that like because you don't like dairy, or is it like a health issue?
Whoa. And I'll have taste of sugar in that.
You can. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's health for me. I just don't want dairy in my diet.
Well,
that's sound. That.
Yeah, it's nice. It's really good.
But I'll leave it there for a bit.
We caught up on Tuesday. And we had a walk around it's a mind-blowing exhibition of your work
Thank you.
in St Helens World of Glass. It's effectively John's moved his gallery of his work into this beautiful exhibition building, and John and I had a nice slow walk around there. I've got to say, mate, it's overwhelming, the quality of your work, but also the uniqueness of your work in terms of you have what I would think of as some portraits, but then there's some pieces in there which they jumped out at me in terms of what they represented. The one which we spent a bit of time talking about was a piece called Voice of the Voiceless.
Voices of the Voiceless, yeah.
Well, tell me that, because that's your daughter, isn't it, on there?
Yeah, it's a portrait of my daughter, and that title is, I've robbed that title from somebody called Loki. Now, I think his meaning behind it was more about, the place has just left me head. Palestine. It was all about the Palestinians and stuff. That's what it's about for him. So I kind of adopted it to myself, and it's more along the lines of like how the kids are being forgotten in society today, choices that are being made by big corporations and not having any thoughts for how it's going to affect our kids in their future. It's also along the lines of like child trafficking and stuff like that, which goes on, which people just turn a blind eye to all the time. Like, you only need to look at the figures in our country, the UK alone. It's something, I think it's around about 4,000 kids are trafficked every year. I'm like, how's that not picked up on? Like, how's that not in the news every day? And then you look at America and you reckon it could be over 1 million people, kids trafficked, but it's for like sexual trafficking and stuff like that. So that piece was to represent all the kids who are going through all the problems that they are and they're going to face further down the line. And it was that's where my fight's for. So like almost everything I do now is for my daughter, and that's what that painting was about.
And obviously it's an issue which you feel really passionately about, and I think all of us do. When you're thinking about that sort of issue, where does the inspiration come from for what the piece is actually going to look like?
It just comes. I've been asked about inspirations before, but if you've met my daughter, like, you don't get much more inspiration than that kid. She's unbelievable. She posed for that picture for me, so she knew, like, I got her to sit in the corner of the room and everything, so she was on board with the whole thing. But the inspiration, it's just like, I suppose that is from the heart. That's just something that I think, hang on a minute, what's going on here? We need to do something about this. So I can't change the world on my own, but I can make a little bit of a stance, and it might pass on to somebody else who might make a stance.
Well, do you know, you've successfully achieved that, mate. You really have, because I've thought quite a lot about it since we walked around your gallery and spoke about it. But tell me, John, we're going to talk about your life and the fact you've overcome such challenges and the great position you now find yourself in, and the remarkable opportunities you got moving forward. But when you walk around a gallery of your work like that, how are you feeling?
Oh, my head falls off. It's like, I think, the way I try to describe it to people is, because obviously not everybody's into art and not everybody's an artist and everybody's got their own little thing that they're into. So if it's a football fan, imagine getting to play for your team in Wembley for the final on the Champions League. That's the way, or if you're a tennis player, getting to play in Wimbledon on court 1 in the final. For me, a solo exhibition, that's what that is. It's like, obviously you can go to different galleries, which might be a little bit more prestigious or whatever, but I'm not asked. It's like, it's everything is there. It's mine. It's like, that's the biggest thing for the art side of my life, is like, I'm not getting much bigger than that.
No, and I mean, the exhibition is on until 4th of November?
5th
of November. St Helens, for those who don't know, it's not exactly a throbbing metropolis, but to be fair, it's but to be fair, it's half an hour's drive from Manchester, Liverpool. It's dead accessible from the motorways.
Yeah.
I would recommend anyone to go and have a look at John's work, to check it out. You've got this podcast is going to be out, I think today's 21st of October, and that gives you a good couple of weeks. I would recommend you go and have a walk about and look at the quality of John's work. It's beautiful. It really is. So you and me grew up, didn't we? Within about 5 miles. In fact, probably less than 5 miles. John you grew up in Kirby, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I grew up in Maghull, which whilst it's only a couple of miles away.
Posher than Kirby.
Well, people from Kirby tend to view people as they think of people from Maghull as like walking around with monocles and canes and nice bowler hats. But no, I mean, I've got loads of my mates from Kirby.
I remember one of my mates when we left school. One of them went to Maghull, and we were like, "Oh, fucking hell, he's gone to Maghull." I think it was Maghull High, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember his name, Craig. The name just come to my head, and everyone was like, "Whoa,
He's made it.
that's posh." That. He's a Tory, definitely down the line.
There's a lot of them about John. There's a lot of them about. When did you first encounter art in high school then?
Primary.
Oh, right, okay. So tell me about that.
School. I think as a kid, I always used to doodle and draw and stuff, and my mum and dad knew they could always keep me quiet if they just give me a pad and a black felt, and I would just draw for days on end. But in my final year in primary school, I had a teacher who was called Mrs. Lomax. She's now called Mrs. Willis. And we still, to this day, are in contact. At least once a year, she'll send me a big, massive message, and then I'll reply a big, massive message, and then we won't speak for another 12 months. But she was just incredible. Like, that was when school became fun and interesting for me. Like, we done stuff like making clay objects. Like, I remember making a big toucan out of clay and then putting it in the kiln and stuff like that. I'm only, at that age, 9, 10, doing stuff like that. She got me to do portraits. Art was just amazing. And that's when for me, it was like, yes, this is it. I still didn't know I wanted to be an artist at that point. I didn't know what I wanted to be until I was about 27. But that's when the passion for art was there then.
And when you went into high school, was it something you pursued sort of at GCSE level?
Yeah, it was as much art as I could do while I was in school, high school. High school, seniors, innit? That's very American of you, that.
It's called high school, isn't it?
Is it? That's very Maghull of you, that.
Got to remember, John, I'm cut from different cloth to you, mate.
I'm only kidding. Yeah, so in seniors, sorry. As soon as they turned around and said, like, you can drop certain subjects, I was like,
yeah,
yes.
I remember that myself.
So I just dropped RE, I dropped French. I probably just didn't go to science and stuff like that. And I used to get to just sit outside the art. So outside our art class, there was a giant table, and I used to just go there and sit and draw and paint and just do art or whatever on my own when everybody else was all do the lessons. So yeah, senior school, it was boss for art anyway. I loved it. I only came out with an A in my GCSEs, and I remember my art teacher being disappointed that I didn't get an A star. But that was
See, I'm a bit older than you, and you couldn't get an A star in my day. So I was thinking, when you said you'd only got an A, what else could you get? But
well, apparently you could have got an A star, and it's somebody ruined all my coursework on me.
Right,
some little rat. So I couldn't use my course. I had to just go in with me exam kinds of pieces or whatever, and that was it.
And when you left, I'm going to keep calling it high school because I'm sure that's right. But was there any thought at that point for you to continue sort of pursuing a career in art, or did it just not seem achievable?
It was. I think art at like that age, it was frowned. Most people now you can't get a job with art. Yeah. You're not going to make money from art, and that was the same scenario. That was the same comment for years and years and years. I'd say until about 2 years ago, people have thought, "Oh fucking hell, he can." The day I left school, the next day I was working behind a bar in Wembley Stadium. At the age of 15, art was the last thing on my mind. Then I was just like, yes, I've just seen Lenny Kravitz on stage. I think it was Aerosmith were playing. I'm working behind a bar.
Earning money.
Birds everywhere. I wasn't asked about the money. It was free ale. I was just getting bladdered while I was working. It was unreal. And that was like, woof. Art was just forgotten about instantly then.
And I mean, you mentioned having a drink on the bar there. When did you sort of first start drinking as like a serious thing?
Every time I worked behind a bar, we would get pissed, no doubt. It wasn't long until I got a job as an engineer. I wasn't an apprentice. It was like you went to like a little, it was like a college type place, and then they put you on into an actual, a proper job, and then they trial you for X amount of months, and if they want to take you on, they'll take you on. It was when I got into that surroundings where it was like every Friday you can go out for a bevy.
Yeah.
That's when bevying was like, oh, this is good shit. It was like, woohoo! I was only talking to my missus the other day about pub crawls around Highton. Like, that was one of my first memories of going out. Like, one of my mates took me on a pub crawl around Highton. I was terrified, but I was only 15.
And it's sort of habit building, that, isn't it? When you start doing something, because I was similar in terms of age when I first started having a pint.
Yeah.
And but if you associate that with positive times or challenging times, then I think something happens in your brain, doesn't it? Where at times where you feel a bit bored or you feel like you need something exciting to do, you don't so much go back to the people you're with, but you go back to kind of the chemical you are doing when you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah. But it was that to me is when, I think it must have only been within one of my first 2 nights out that cocaine came into play then. I was definitely 16 when I started snorting as well. So bevying frequently at the age of 15, 16 and snorting cocaine as well.
And at this point, were you, because I know you worked for quite some years in the Inland Revenue, were you working, was that like an office job, was it then?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. But I was an engineer for about 6 to 12 months maybe. And you wouldn't go on a night out. I wouldn't go on a night out then without snorting. It was only a small amount at that time. But pretty quick, I got a job. I think they were called Revenue and Customs at that time then. No, Customs and Excise it was. And I got a job there because my sister worked there. And I was like,
Give it a try.
boss job this, isn't it? It's like £750 a month. I was like, yes. I was only getting 100 quid I think about 60 quid a week I was getting as an engineer. So somebody's offering me about 700 quid a month. I was like, boom.
Yeah.
Fucking stuck there for 20 years.
Of course. I remember David, you talk about this before. Tell me about, so obviously you've been really honest about this in the past. You first sort of encountered cocaine in your sort of mid to late teens then. Are we talking here about at this stage at just like once a week when you went out, just a little bit here and there? Was it something which felt quite recreational at the time?
Yeah, definitely. At the early stages, it was just fun. I remember having my first line and hanging off everybody's shoulder, telling them how much I loved them. I loved everybody. And I was going to take them here and I was going to take them to me mum's for the tea. And this is like fully grown men. And I'm like, but you're my favourite, you. And then I go to the next one, you're my favourite, you. And I loved the world. And I remember like, that was unreal, that. But if I just jump back slightly, I used to quite often black out when I used to drink ale. And I'd fight, or I wouldn't even know that I'd had a fight, but I'd wake up with a black eye or a busted nose. And I'm like, what happened there? And it was because I couldn't handle the air. I just get aggressive off it and get filled in. I can't remember if I ever won or not. And but when I had cocaine, I knew what I'd done all the nights. Like I remember everything for the night. I loved everybody and I talked a lot of shit, but I didn't fight as much then. I felt like I was in control. And I think as soon as that happened, that was a reason to snort. So I always, remember I said to you the other day, there's always a million excuses to snort, but never a reason. But that was my reason. It was like, well, listen, if I don't have a line, I'm going to have a fight. So I'll just have a little dabble and I'll stop fighting. And then it progressed.
It's really interesting because when I've heard you talking so far, my impression is that the early part of your life was pretty happy. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you never felt that this was sort of, masking over any negative feelings you were having, anything that wasn't right in your life. It was just something you came into recreationally that then escalated.
Literally. And I mean, my mum and dad are boss parents, and most people, everyone who knows them will always say how amazing they are. Like, they was just, they never smoked. You'd probably see them drink twice a year at Christmas or something like that. We wasn't rich, we wasn't poor, or if we was poor, they never let on to us that they were poor. They was just a nice, comfortable, happy family. I used loads of reasons as I got older for snorting. Like when my auntie passed away, that was like the biggest thing, that like first death in the family. So I was snorting because she passed away. It's just an excuse.
And when was the point that you reached where drink and drugs sort of departed being recreational and that you realised it was a problem you had?
I'd say I knew that before. So before my daughter was born, I knew it was an issue. I used to have a little calendar on my desk, and I put a little marker on it of when I'd snorted. And I remember at the end of one of the years looking at, I remember the colour, it was a green highlighter, orange highlighter. And I was like, fucking hell, that's a lot of snorting to do that. I must have only been about 18, 19, I reckon then. But even then I was like, ooh. But, you know, I lived at home with my mum and dad. I don't think I had to pay rent, or I never paid it anyway. I had no responsibilities. I didn't have a wife, I didn't have a kid, I didn't have a house to pay for.
You were holding your job down, you were going to work, everything like that.
My job, I was always spot on in my work, I'd always do my job. So it never affected me like that. I think when it really kicked in that there was a problem was when my daughter was born. It was a long birth. I think it was over a couple of days, weren't it? It was like she was in labour for a bit. And I remember the nurse going, right, go on. Like, she'd been born. Go on, Dad, you can go home now. Get yourself some rest. Get in there. Boom, on the phone. Got a quarter limo dropped off at the house straight away. I went home with me mate, and I just sat snorting all night instead of going home, relaxing. And the next day, I had to come back to pick Jen and the baby up from the hospital. And I hadn't been to bed. Must have stopped snorting about 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I went to hospital in the afternoon and picked them up and brought them home. On the first day the baby was born. That's fucking horrible, that. That's not nice behaviour.
But it's not you either, it's the addiction, isn't it?
It was, yeah, it's like my sponsor always used to say to me about, if you put your daughter in one hand and drugs in another, who are you going to choose? And I'm like, my daughter. And he's like, you choose cocaine every time now. So that's when I knew it was really bad for me, is when I was starting to choose cocaine and drink over my wife and my daughter.
And at this stage, is it still a weekend thing, or is it encroached into the weeks as well?
It would probably be 5 days a week, I reckon, at that point. So I worked on the doors as well, from about the age of about 22. And I'd work 4 or 5 nights a week. Like, so the clubs that I worked for, they wouldn't have known that what I was doing, because if they did, they'd have just got rid of me, because you're of no use. But I used to be able to hide. I'm being careful with my hands here, because my nails look shit on this one.
No,
but on this one, they look dead good. They started coming off on that.
It does. It looks really tremendous. Can I get mine done like that before we go home?
Well, when you get your photo shoots, we put
Oh, nice one. Yeah. Sorry, John, go on, mate.
So I would quite often, I don't think there was many nights when I was on the doors where I didn't snort. And I remember some nights, it could have been easy, like, 3 to 6 grams while I'm on the doors would be an average night.
So that is a lot. Because if one bag would be a gram, would it?
Yeah.
So
but I'd make sure I went in with 3, and then I'd probably try and get another 3 on the back of that.
And when you're using the drug to that extent, are you drinking as well?
Not alcohol while I was on the door, and I couldn't have pulled that off, so I'd just be sipping
of course, I see.
bottles of water and Red Bull just to try and keep my mouth dry, because there's nothing worse than somebody coming over and you're asking for ID like that. You've got no saliva in your mouth, you can't ask the name or anything.
Strange question to ask, but when you're using it to that extent, are you enjoying it? No.
Like, it's like the build up to it. You'd be like, oh, I can't wait to do this. Your ass would be twitching and everything, you're dead excited for it. And then you'd put it out and you'd nail a line, and then you just go, oh, fuck. And you'd just be like, oh, what have I done? And I'd just become like a shell. I must have been the shittest woman ever. Whenever I had a line, I'd just be like, oh, and I couldn't speak. I'd really struggle to hold a conversation at that point. And I'd just be dead paranoid then as well.
Because, I mean, I suppose being on the door, you've got to keep your wits about you as well in case something goes down.
Like, I wasn't that bad as a woman.
Yeah.
Like, I used to enjoy having a good scrap and that, but, like, you know, if it was a fight broke out, then I'd be like, woohoo, I'm in there. But you shouldn't have to do that. If you're the doorman, you should be able to talk it out. And I couldn't, because I had nothing in me to say. I'd just be like, I can mute.
And so you sort of
late teens, early 20s at that point, or is this a little bit further on in the story?
I'd say that must be in, like 23, 24, up until I finished the Doors.
And you'd met your wife at this point.
I'd met Jen. Oh, I'm on the spot. Let's just say I met Jen. When I was 21, I'm going to go for.
So were you living together at this point?
No, well, not when I met her.
Well, it'd be a bit weird if you lived with her and when you met her. You would have asked me.
You better fucking edit that, you know.
Hey, don't worry.
Leave it in, I'm not asked. I can't believe it.
Could be just be staying in the
my
box
head,
room.
it was married,
Yeah.
but anyway. No, so I met Jen when I was 21. And I can't remember. We moved in pretty quick within a couple of years, didn't we? Yeah, she was dead. She was dead keen. She looked at me and thought, I'm not letting him go. Let's get an house.
So, I mean, like me, when I moved in with my missus, financial responsibilities, obviously you mentioned being at your mum's, but financial responsibilities start to emerge, your rent and
Yeah.
your mortgage, your car, your bills, all of this sort of thing. How was the extent to which you were spending money on drugs? How was that impacted upon your ability to contribute financially?
I think in the early days, it wasn't as bad when we were first in there because I worked the Doors 4 nights a week. So I could have been picking up 400 quid a week or 500 quid a week. So there's me drugs paid for quite frequently. But then, so I had my day job as well. So if I worked on the Doors till 5 a.m, I'd go home, get my head down for a couple of hours, and I'd be in the office for 10 o'clock. So I worked a lot, and I managed to keep it going as well. Like, I could function quite well.
Well, I was going to
But I was
say,
young.
yeah, but it's still
I struggle off a Red Bull now.
it's still quite unique that you were able to maintain that routine and that level of tough work.
I remember in the later stages, like, I'd quite often just go on the toilet to the boss, and I'd go get on the toilet, put my hood over my head, set my phone for 10 minutes, and I'd try and have a sleep because I was that fucked. I was just in for it. So it took its toll in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just check back in with the art for a moment here. Obviously, you were reaching a point here which is a real challenge in your life, a real struggle. How far from your mind was this passion of art that you had in primary school?
Wasn't there? No. I think I might have done a few little doodles every now and again because, again, I used to think I could draw a good portrait if I was off my cake, and I couldn't. They wasn't very good. So I might have had a little doodle, but I might have only drawn to try and like use that as an excuse to get out of the way. I'm just drawing, but I'm not. I'm snorting. But art was a no-go. It wasn't. It wasn't even a thought that I could be an artist. Not at all in my head that I could be an artist. I thought I was stuck in the revenue for the rest of my life.
And stuck with this addiction as well, I presume.
Yeah.
Was there a point you regard in hindsight as your lowest ebb?
Yeah. So my rock bottom. It's the maddest rock bottom. Some people might take the piss out of it for being a rock bottom because, you know, I wasn't homeless. Me and Jen had split up. I'd lost my car. I'd moved back in with me mum. I was only getting to see the baby a couple of days a week. That still wasn't me rock bottom. It was my final day, one of the nights when I was working on the Doors, and I was skint, so I got a load of... I hope people understand what Lemo is. I'll just say cocaine, just in case. So we got a load of cocaine. I just sound dead posh when I'm saying that.
No, it's just great. I think everyone probably is clear, but yeah,
Just in case.
Remember, this is a Liverpool podcast, so we do throw in some quite Liverpudlian style words. I don't know if Lemo is, but anyway, we know what you mean.
It is.
Crack on.
So anyway, I got 18 grams, and I thought I need to take them into work and I need to sell them somehow to make some money here. And I snorted everyone. Just nailed 18. I was on working from 9 till 3 in the morning, and I snorted 18 grams. All to myself. I think maybe I might have given a little line here and there to somebody else. And I was a mess. And at the end of a night, normally everybody just has like one little bevy before they go home. And I asked for a Sambuca. And the girl behind the bar just looked at me and went, "You're a fucking disgrace, you." And I was like, whoa.
Because she'd kind of realised what you were doing.
And one of the things when you get into recovery is you need to let go. You can't have an ego. your ego needs to be smashed to pieces. And I feel like that smashed my ego to pieces because a lot of people around you are all like, oh, it's all right. Don't worry. You know, you've had a bad time, or
Well, it's this
you know,
excuses, isn't
your
it,
Auntie
again?
Anne died, or you went to Kenya and you had a bad time. Like, you see what things happens over there, and leave them alone. And it was like, she just seen right through it all and just hit me with it. And I was like, shit. And that was it. Then the next day I went back to Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was the new me.
And at that point, when you were having that conversation with the girl behind the bar, at that period of your life, how's your mental health?
I was probably miserable. I was like, I was miserable. I was always depressed. Like, the world was going to end. No, it was like the usual where you just don't want to be alive anymore kinds of feelings. It was at that point.
It was as bad as that.
100%. I knew. Like, there was nights when I'd go to bed praying that I would have an heart attack and die. That's where I was up to, because it was just, there was no way out. I couldn't, like, I often say, like, an addict, when they turn around to you when they're clean and sober for a couple of days and they say, listen, I promise I'm not going to do this again, they mean that. They're not being assholes at that point. They're not, but these, in your head, and it just comes and gets you again all the time. And I must have said I was going to stop a million times. I used to go to CA quite a lot, and I had about 50 newcomer keyrings. It never ever stick. It never worked for me until after that conversation with my mate who said, "You're a disgrace," and that's when it clicked.
And that's Cocaine Anonymous, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Just tell me, because let's just pause in the story here, because obviously our podcast is about success through struggle.
Yeah.
And I know that there will be people listening and watching who are in a bad spot at the moment. And
Yeah.
I guess that could be through a whole range of issues. But for someone who's faced that rock bottom and now is in a position where you're walking around that beautiful gallery of your own work,
Yeah.
someone who's in great shape, who's in good form, and he's got so much to look forward to, what would you say to someone who felt they were at their rock bottom now?
Reach out. That's simple. Like, if you could reach out to somebody and just say, listen, even if they just say, I think I'm an addict or I think I'm an alcoholic, that's a massive step. Like, to be able to say that. And after that, I would say get into a meeting would be there's many different recovery processes out there at the moment. And I know there is, and it works for some, doesn't work for others. But for me, I can only talk about what's worked for me. And Cocaine Anonymous worked for me. And going to a meeting and sitting in a room with like-minded, so you might not all be you might not have the same jobs or anything like that, but one thing you can all connect with is that you're all addicts and you're all fucking hopeless to it. So to sit with other people and just say your name, like to say, my name's John, I'm an addict. I get goosebumps now just saying it. It's the most freeing thing you'll ever say. And that's the beginning of the journey. And what I would say is to people who are new to it is don't get put off by the word God. It gets mentioned in AA and CA. It's not a religious thing at all. It's not like a mad cult. They just use the word God as it's a word for you to be able to relate to. And so for me, I would replace the word God. In the early days, I'd replace it with my Auntie Anne. So when I was speaking to my higher power, it'd be her. So I'm not talking to God because I'm not into religion at all. So don't be put off by stuff like that. And I would just say, reach out to a close member of your family or a friend, get to a meeting, get that first meeting under your belt, and get the 12 steps of recovery done, because the 12 steps of recovery is incredible.
Well, do you know what? It's so great to hear that it worked for you, because when I think of addiction, the AA and TA and obviously the Gamblers Anonymous, and there's a whole range of help out there. And I mean, like you say, you do hear of different methods working for different people, but it's so reassuring to know that the help that's out there, which is probably the best known, is a living, breathing embodiment of the fact that it works.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my mate who's no longer with us now, like, he was an absolute crazy addict for cocaine. He was on another level. Me and him was just, if you looked at us, you'd be like, you're going nowhere. Another friend of mine as well, you'd have thought, he's going to die. The three of you, the only way you're going out is death by drugs or drink. The three of us are clean and sober now. Well, one of them could still drink, actually. He used the meetings for a little bit, and it wasn't for him. But for me and Dave, the meetings were everything. and it cleans us, and it works for me. And I just think if you're that fucked, I would have tried anything. So another thing, like one of my sponsors was like, you come into my house at this time on this day, and we're going to go through some of the steps. And I'm like, well, I haven't got a car. My missus is in work. I'm not asked. Get here. If you have to get here and you have to walk for 4 hours, you're going to walk here. Because if you want it that much, you'll walk, you'll do it. And I think that's the mindset you've got to be in, is that I am willing to do anything to get clean and sober again. And if once you're in that mindset, then I think you'll do it.
That's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, listen, well done, man. And I would also say to anyone else who's watching, who's in a tough spot, that the reason we started this podcast was because we wanted to show people that even in the toughest situation, where the cards seem unstoppably stacked against you, that there is a way forward, that there's hope, and it does start with talking. And it's lovely to welcome John onto the podcast, who's the living, breathing example that it's never too late and that there's always a way forward.
Definitely.
So, when does art make an appearance back in your life?
27. I'm 38 now, and I know I still look about 27. You don't have to, but it's just what people say. But I was 27, so I used to have nose problems anyway. I put that from when I was an engineer. The fumes, there was no extractors and shit, but then obviously snorting cocaine for about 50 years after, that probably had a little bit of a bearing on it.
It would have been a contributing factor,
Yeah, it definitely
I would
helped
think.
out. So I used to have loads of issues with my nose, and I'd have a very, very sinusy. So I had an operation on my nose, and you had to be housebound for 2 weeks. I think I made mine bleed for the next week, didn't I? So I could go another 2 weeks off work. And because I was housebound, my wife's dad said, yeah, here's some canvases, why don't you have a little go painting? Because obviously we talked about art and the little doodles here and there. And he come round with like a loads of home bargain canvases, which are like $1.99, brushes which look like the end of a donkey's ass or something, and loads of acrylic paints. And I just started painting, and I was like, this is all right, this is quite fun. And I put one on Facebook and just stuck it on, and this girl messaged me straight away, Danielle from Kirby. She was like, how much is that? And I was like, fuck knows. But, do you want to buy it? She was like, yeah. And I was like, how much? I think she paid me 30 quid for it. And I was like, oh, what? For that? So the next thing, I had about 15 canvases lined up. Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, right the way across. And it just become like just a thing. Like, it was just, I loved it. And even though it was repetitive, I'm getting paid, and it was just, I loved the art side of it.
And are you still working at the Inland Revenue at this point? Right, okay.
Yeah, but I fucked them.
Yeah. Who likes the tax, man?
Yeah, I pay enough anyway now. So I was doing that, and it was kicking off nicely, but there was something about it that wasn't right. And it was because I was just copying Disney images. Sorry, Walt. For image, and he's dead anyway. Yeah.
He is frozen somewhere though, isn't he? Walt Disney?
Defrost for me now, I bet you.
Hope there's not a microwave near him when this podcast's on.
John owes us 30 quid. So it was, even though I was satisfied to a point, there was just something missing, and I wasn't getting as much joy out of what I should do. And I suppose I hadn't found me. Like, I hadn't found my style. And my friends who were talked about before, who took me to CA and everything at the beginning, he passed away with cancer at fucking hell. And before he did, he said to me, you need to go and speak to my mate, Danny O'Connor. He said, he's an artist. He was in my school, and he's making he earns money from art, and he lives in his own house, and he doesn't have another job, and he's just an artist. And I was like, okay, sounds, well, fucking hell, no, I don't know when I'm able to pay me mortgage off for Disney painting for 30 quid. So anyway, that was the end of that. And then after he passed away, I thought, I can't leave that. So I just fired a message to Danny O'Connor, and I was like, listen, mate, I said, Dave was my best mate, he mentioned you. I don't know why I'm messaging you, to be honest. And he was like, listen, just come to mine. Come to mine, you can have a paint in the studio with me. And I was like, whoa. So that I got myself a packet of Rich Tea biscuits. Thought I'm not going empty-handed. And I bounced around to his house, and there his studio at that time was in one of his top bedrooms. And he's painting, doing this portrait, and he's showing me everything that he knows. And then he went, right, I'll go and make us a cuppa. You just do some painting on that. And I was like, fuck off, I'm not touching that. And he come back up, and I hadn't touched it. I was still eating my biscuit. And
You got to dip your rich tea in your tea.
I like
haven't
them
you?
dry and wet.
Do you?
Biscuits.
So there was nothing on the canvas when he came back in.
Apart from what he'd done.
Got you.
And he was like, listen, you need to stop being scared of it. And he just got a brush and just put loads of white paint through it. And I was like, oh, you fucked that, mate. I was like, what have you done? And he was like, no, so work with it now. And I was like, what, should we start working what some people would call a mistake? I was going to use inverted commas then, like as Joey or friends. And he was like, you need to work with it now. And I was like, all right. And it was kind of about just not being scared of the painting anymore, like just going with it. And if a mistake was to happen, work with it. It might become the best part of your painting almost. So I went away from there and I stopped painting like Disney and I started painting like Danny. And I reckon for the next 6 months, everything that I'd done, I'd spray paint lines through it or Tipp-Ex in there. But I felt a lot more free. I still wasn't happy with where I was going with it. One of my mates from Ireland, she messaged me this digital image that some fella had done, and it looked like it'd been done with a palette knife. And I was like, oh, I'll try that. That was it. As soon as I got a palette knife and I started putting paint on dead thick, and you could drag, like with a brush, you can drag to your point, but with a palette knife, you can go mad with it. And I feel like that was a little bit more of me, which is a little bit more energetic, like, I've been hyped up for cocaine for like 15 years. That energy's got to come out somewhere again now. And I think it was the palette knife work. That's just when I was like, it become my thing.
Well, just anyone who's listening who wants to get an image of this in your mind, check out John's Instagram page, which is on the, however you're watching or listening, it's on the bottom of our title, the bottom of this episode. I must admit, when I saw you doing this, like stood in front of your canvas, top off, palette knife in your hand. First I was thinking, why the bloody hell has he got a palette knife? I thought he was a painter. But you seem to do a good proportion of your work using this knife. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's like, what I tend to do now is, I used to just block in very basic colours with a brush. But then what I found was that if I'd done a painting with a brush and I time-lapsed it, people really enjoyed seeing the image coming together, even though the image that I do with a brush looks nothing like the final outcome once I've done a palette knife. People love to see that, like, especially if I'm doing a portrait of somebody who's lost somebody and they get to see that person coming together on the canvas. It can be quite emotional for them. Absolutely. And people love it. So I tended to put a lot more effort into the brush side of it, but then after that, the whole painting gets covered with a palette knife and the paint then. So it goes on nice and thick. How it happens, I don't know. I just go for it. And then I finish it off, which would be me, like, signature is gold lines, which seem to define the whole image and make the image pop and become my work, I think, at that point.
Well, do you know what? It's interesting because that was one of the first thing I noticed when I took a look at your work. That seemed very unique to me. I remember I saw the portrait you did of Bill Shankly.
Yeah.
And obviously I'd seen Bill Shankly on so many photographs and probably some paintings as well. But the way you use those lines, it brings something quite different to the portrait. Is that something which you were trying to achieve?
I don't even know where it came from. Like, we tried to discuss this and some people have said, oh, would you reckon it's because you used to love doing lines of cocaine and you sit there chopping it all up with your credit card? In the end, it wasn't a credit card. I had to use like a business card. I was that poor. But maybe it was something to do with the lines from that. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. It sounds good. So let's say it is. I genuinely don't know where it came from. And I started doing it. He's an artist that I'm sure his name is Caravaggio or something like that. And he does like technical drawings. And you quite often see lines flicking off on a technical drawing. And I think that it's come from somewhere anyway. And I started doing it. And in the early days, I'd do it with any colour I wanted. It'd be white, it'd be blue or whatever. And then I'd done a painting of Conor McGregor and I'd done it with gold and it just looked regal. it was like, yeah, that looks like £1 million right there now. It looked dead expensive with the gold lines. I'll still dip in and out of other colours every now and again for certain paintings, but the gold line work or the line work alone, I feel like if you see a painting and it's got that on it, you don't really need to look to see who signed it. I hope people look at it and they just know it's mine. So
Well, I'd never seen anything with that unique style, so I would completely agree with that. When I had a walk around your exhibition on earlier this week, when I drove home, I was trying to think of any, because I'm not a huge art fan, but I love looking at art, but I can't.
I hope you love looking at mine.
I certainly did, absolutely. But the Picasso came to mind, particularly on one or two of the darker pieces you do. You know that Scream one of the Picasso's got? I think it's called the Scream, isn't it?
That's not Picasso.
Oh, is it not?
No, it's not, is it? It's someone Google it quick.
Can you have a look? I'm sure you know
Is
the
it
one.
something like?
It's
It's
someone.
got a
Yeah.
mad name beginning with V.
Oh, is
I'm
it?
sure it is. If I'm wrong here, I'm fucked, aren't I? There you go. Yeah, I always think it's Munch.
Oh, is it
Edward
Munch?
Munch? Yeah.
Well, I could remember the painting, just not the painter. So I mean, you know, because it's interesting that your work, it sort of moves between. You use that word regal, which I get, but there are some pieces there which are quite dark, aren't there?
Yeah, I'll paint a lot of emotion, without a doubt. It's always, I could be sitting here watching the telly and I could see something on the telly that'll upset me, or I could see something on the telly that'll excite me, and I'm like, right, Jen, I'm off, I'm going to paint, bump, and I'm in there and I just start to painting. Or I tend to paint quite religious when I'm angry. I'm not into religion, but somehow painting Jesus on a cross makes me feel better. Don't know. But yeah, I can paint quite dark. So a previous exhibition that I had, I based quite a lot of it around drinking drugs and depression and suicide and stuff like that. Because in recovery, they say there's like the only three places you're going to go in addiction is you're either going to go, you're going to get into sobriety, or you're going to go to a mental asylum, or you're going to end up dead. Simple as that. You choose one of the three. You're not getting anything else. So in one of my exhibitions, I'd done a picture of one which made me look like I was a little bit crazy. I'd done a painting of me in a coffin, which upset quite a few people. But then I'd done a painting of me holding a robin in my hand, and the robin's red breast just lit me up with all red on like reflection. And that was like the sobriety, that was like the happiness, and that's me. I can find happiness in the simplest of things. Now I'm in recovery and I'm sober. So I can put a lot of that in my work. But just because I'm in recovery doesn't mean I don't have dark days. But when I do have them, I paint out the pain now, kind of thing. I don't go and pick up drugs or drink anymore. I'll paint it instead.
I mean, that's such a powerful image, isn't it? Of you using the art to unlock those negative emotions and to make you move forward in a better frame of mind. Is that something that's very apparent to you, that you feel very different before you start to paint as when you feel afterwards?
I sometimes can wind myself up. So I could go in dead happy and then start painting and come out fuming. And she's like, what's up with you? And he's sweat pissing off me. And I'm like, well, I thought somebody in my head said this about me, and then I had an argument with them for about an hour while I'm painting. I just make things up. And the person never said nothing. I just thought it for a split second. What if he said this? And then I'll have an argument. I am all right, though, I swear to God. I reckon everybody does it. You have like little arguments in your head.
Oh, we all
I hope
do
you
that.
do anyway.
Well, we all scenario-wise, don't we?
But I mine go on for like days. Like I'll get that person at some point in my head while I'm doing that painting, and they're gone. And it's just dead weird. Like I can float off like that. But yeah, at the same side, I could go in the studio and be wound up, and I'll put Slipknot on and start painting to Slipknot. And then when I finish, I'm like, yes, I'm just nice and relaxed. Jen, my wife, will do the same. She'll be sitting there and she's like, fucking hell, go and paint. Because if I haven't painted for a day, I can get very not itchy. That sounds like I've got something. Like, tetchy's the word, isn't it? I think I'm looking for, not itchy. And I'll get a little bit like frustrated, and she's like, just go and paint, will you?
Is she a Slipknot fan?
No.
Isn't she?
She knows if Slipknot's on in the studio, she'll be upstairs.
So it's lovely to hear this, because by this point then in the story, you've regained your passion for art.
Yeah.
But when did you first start to think, I can make a living out of this?
I was involved in an open exhibition in 2015 in the St. Helens World of Glass, and I put a painting in, and I put it in for 150 quid. It was a 90 by 90 centimetres painting, and it was of the liver bird. The painting itself didn't sell, but I managed to sell 50 prints of it, and at that time I was selling prints for 25 quid. Bear in mind, a few years before, I was selling an original paint for 30 quid. Now I'm selling prints for £25, and we sold out of them all. And we were like, fucking hell, that's all right, that, innit? So I think at that point I started thinking, this could become something, this. But still, if you're selling a paint for 150 quid, it's not going to pay your mortgage still. It wasn't going to clear the bills. But what it was doing was, it was covering the money that I've lost from leaving the doors. It was backing up all that. And then I think it was growing and growing. Like, things started happening and we'd have to pinch ourselves. Like, when we got invited down to Mamadou Sakho's house when he played for Liverpool, and we're like, wow, that's weird, that, innit? So we got loads of exposure on the back of that. So my profile started growing up a little bit more. And he dropped that painting, by the way, right on the corner of a table. Ripped it right in front of us.
Did he really?
Yeah.
He made me feel nervous when he played centre-back for Liverpool. And obviously when he had your work in his hand, he was quite nervous as well.
He was, you know what, he was lovely.
He's such a nice fella. Yeah,
he got a print of the painting, put on his shin pad, and on the other shin pad, he got his wife and his daughter. So he was bouncing around with my painting on one and his missus on the other with his kids. And I was like, that's heavy, that. So again, I was like, whoa. Just little moments like that started happening. And I reached out, like, after doing that one of him, I reached out to a few other celebrities. Like, I painted them and people were like, hang on a minute, he got to meet Sakho. Let's all tag this one in. Let's get him to meet this celebrity next. And that started happening a little bit. And I got to meet Eddie Hall, who was World's Strongest Man in 2017. And he invited us up to Stoke and we met him. We had photos and we were chatting and all that. And I said, I'd done another one about a year later because my style had changed then. That's when the palette knife came in and he loved it. And it's still on most of his YouTube videos. You'll quite often see it in the background. And I went, I'll do you another one next year. And he was like, no, wait until I've won the Worlds, I think it was. So then he won the Worlds and we done another painting for him. So it was like that celebrity focus started coming, and my love for the world of strongman came into play then. And I started doing a few other paintings for strongmen and stuff. And it was getting to a point where the profile was there. But what I kept doing was I'd be giving these paintings away to these celebrities. And if somebody else, like, you'd ask for a painting, I'd charge you 500 quid. And my daughter turned around one day and she went, hey, Dad, why do you keep giving all the celebrities paintings for free, but you charge, like, people who aren't celebrities money? I was like, oh, shit. So that was where it was like, right, well, from now on, we'll charge them. And it got to the point where getting to charge people for the painting was like, and the money was going up to £250 to £500. I think once it hit 250, I was thinking I could leave my work here.
And tell me about that. When did you take the plunge?
So I dropped a couple of days a week in work anyway. So I was only working 3 days a week. Everyone in the family, John, that's dangerous, that. You're not going to be able to afford this. You're sure you should be doing that? And then when I was toying with the idea of quitting, they were like, no, you need to make sure you're doing 2 days a week. My uncle said it to me the other day. He even said, I remember your mum told me, I thought, he's a fucking dickhead, him. So we were away in Dubai and the strongman competition was split over 2 days. And there was this big, massive, what's the word I'm looking for? Inflatable, like, entrance to the arena kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And this music just came on as I was bouncing through and she started recording me and I was just doing this big, heavy, mad, happy dance and I was like, that's it, innit? Like, I'm gone. I'm not going back there. So we sent an email and I was like, I'm done. I'm not coming back. I resign. And that was like, I put that post on my social media then to say, like, bye-bye. This is the happy dance when you retire, you resign. To me, I retired. I still say that to this day. I've retired at the age of 36 because it doesn't feel like a job.
I'm sure it doesn't, but I mean, you mentioned before that the price of the paintings started to go up. I mean, your website is also on all of our socials, and your work is on there. I know that people can order via Instagram and via the website. But I think it's fair to say that the price that people are valuing your work at, because I think it's important to put it that way, because I think art's worth what people are prepared to pay for it.
Yeah.
So if your work is very good and someone believes that it will enhance their home or enhance their wall or enhance their business or whatever, then it's right, isn't it, that you charge accordingly?
Exactly.
And I mean, I know some of your paintings are going upwards of 2,500 now for originals, aren't they? I mean, how does that feel? That
It's mad.
yeah,
But I don't feel like I'm robbing somebody of it. Like in the
Definitely
past,
not.
I would feel awkward asking anybody for money. I took a pencil portrait to somebody's house and they owed me 60 quid and the money was in her hand and I couldn't ask for it, so I just walked off. And she had to come chase me. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. I hadn't. I just felt like I was robbing her by taking money off her. But I've got to a point now where I feel quite confident in my work, like that I could hold my own against any artist in the world. And it's not being big-headed, it's just being proud of what I do and what I create, because you're getting everything of me in your art, in your painting. You know, like you're not just getting a painting, you're probably getting 15 years of addiction and battling all of that. Then you're getting like stuff like the depression things, but then you're getting all my happiness and my positivity that I've got now. All that's going into that painting. And I don't really think you can put a price on it, to be honest. Like, you know, I feel like these paintings that I do now, where 5 years' time, somebody might pay 25 or 50,000 for that. And it's the same piece of artwork from today. I just think it's just your audience changes, doesn't it? The bigger your audience and the bigger your profile, the price, I've no doubt, will go up as well.
Well, I mean, I've no doubt at all. I mean, I totally agree with what you say, that in your work, you do see that positivity and that passion and that pain. Yeah. And for you to give yourself like that, that is going to... that's going to attract interest, and just you said, you know, you don't want to be arrogant before. You're not, because winners aren't modest.
Yeah.
And to come from the journey you've been on, I think it's just so remarkable, John. Tell me, here we are, 2021. If art hadn't found you again, or you hadn't found art again, what do you think? Where do you think you'd be now?
Dead.
Really?
I think so. I think it sounds a bit heavy to say that, but I think there was nothing else that was going to save me. Recovery, yes. Like AA and CA did save me, but I think for me it comes hand in hand with my artwork. It's like I don't think that. So where I used to go to 4 meetings a week, I don't do that anymore. Like I don't have to go to a meeting every single week. I could go a year without going to a meeting, but I am in that place where I know I'm recovered. So you know what I mean? Yeah. And art is almost like my meetings. So I could do a painting and it might be based on addiction, and I'll put that out there. So in recovery, one of the big things is giving back. And I feel like I give back a lot via my artwork. And when I do a piece relating to addiction or depression or whatever, I have tons of conversations with people behind the scenes, like hours and hours on end, helping other addicts. Like I'll signpost them where to go. I'll sit and I'll talk to the families and the friends of people who've got addicts, and you know what I mean? And I'll help all of them. That for me is where that's my recovery as well. But without art, I don't think I could do that.
Well, what a fantastic way in which you were able to emerge from the challenges you had, John. And I've got to ask you now what's next, because just to remind everyone, you've got the beautiful exhibition of your work at World of Glass in St Helens for another couple of weeks from now.
Yeah.
You're getting a documentary made about you as well. Who is it? Let's give the media agency a plug. Who is it?
It's MPK Media. So this is the first documentary that they've done. They approached me.
MKP Media.
NPK. Wait, you got that mixed up, didn't
you? I did.
It's like a fucking game of Scrabble, that. Yeah. NPK Media. And they approached me and they were like, listen, we've heard your story, we've read it in the paper, we've heard a few interviews. Let's try and document this for you. And I was like, I'm not interested enough to do that. Turns out I am.
Well, it's very,
Same.
it's very cinematic. Your story.
The thing, so there's a little clip on my Instagram at the minute, and it's playing at the exhibition. It's a 1 minute clip that they done with me over one day, and it's a little teaser. And the way they described it is, it's a pencil sketch of what's to come. It's incredible what they've put together. So yeah, I've got a documentary, and that we're having a premiere on the 15th of December. I'm not going to disclose where just yet because I don't think we have. And it's only going to be a small one, but then I think they're going to release it over 3 episodes on like YouTube and stuff like that. So
Is there any thought of taking it to a mainstream broadcaster?
I think so, but when you look at it now, from what I gather, more people watch YouTube than they do watch the BBC.
Well, do you know what? That's right. And it's who we talk? Oh, we're talking about this with Daliso Chimbonda, weren't we? These days the world of podcasts and non-mainstream releases. Yeah. The reason why people like them is because who wants to be faffing around with television executives and getting the knock back and then having to go back again? And I'm sure that these days you can monetize things better independently.
I wouldn't want to be involved with them anyway.
No time for them at all. So
nonsense.
Let's think, apart from the documentary.
Sorry, I whispered it.
Yeah, they were John's opinions. They were nothing to do with the podcast. So let's wind forward 5 years from now. If we meet again, and I really hope you do come back on and see us, John. How's the story developed?
I hope it's going to be like, I feel like my artwork's quite well known in Liverpool, probably quite across the country, because when we done the online art classes, me and my daughter in lockdown, we had people from likes of Essex and Newcastle, then it went to Mexico and India and Italy, and we had people staying up overnight just so they could tune into our classes. So I've reached a nice audience. I would like to be like known worldwide for my artwork. I would like to have my own gallery. So no offense to other galleries, but I want my work in my gallery where people can come and visit, and then I can also exhibit for other artists who I'm friends with and stuff like that, and give them the chance that I never had. I'd like to do stuff like that. I've got an NFT collection being released sometime this year. Hopefully that could be another...
What's NFT?
Non-fungible tokens, which these digital images, and if you Google them, like cryptocurrency and stuff like that, it's exploding quite big at the minute. So I've got a collection coming out with that. So yeah, 5 years time, I'd love to be having my own gallery, see what's going on with the NFT world. I'm aiming to have another exhibition next year. So that's within me 5 years, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So at the minute, I've put myself on a socialise on lockdown where I don't speak to... I don't go out for coffee. I don't go and see my mates. I don't go out to parties. The only things I bother with at the minute is my artwork, my daughter, my wife, and the training. So Christmas Day, I'll see my family Christmas Day, but that's the only day you've got me. And if it's Emmy's birthday or Jen's birthday, then I'll go out and I'll celebrate with them. If they want to go for a meal, I'll go out with them. But I've locked myself away from the rest of the world unless it's art related and it's business and it's art. And that's so I can focus on a new collection. So come February, when I'm out of my little lockdown, I should hopefully have a massive new collection. And that's when we're going to approach anybody in Liverpool to have a solo exhibition. So I want it to be within the Liverpool city centre area and have an exhibition sometime between February and August next year as well.
Well, we're all going to keep our eye out for that, John. And if anyone is watching or listening who's involved with those type of galleries, I cannot recommend John's work enough. You've got to see it. It was just so striking, wandering around, and it's the first time I've ever been in St Helens feeling positive. So,
hey, I've got a St Helens tattoo on my leg. You know,
sorry,
it says I love St Helens. I just love St Helens, me. Just love them. But can I just jump in, right?
Please.
But you won't say please after say it, but if you can see this little bracelet on my wrist, right? I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
My daughter is 11 years of age, and she's kind of this. So everything we do, like, you know what you're going about, what's your why? She's my why. Jen's my why. That's why I do what I do every day. And I try not to back down from anything. I'll challenge everything. I'll go at it all. to help her with her future. She set up her own little bracelet business a couple of months back. She made more money on my exhibition night than I did. I'm not even lying.
Crystals.
Not yet. She won't release them until next year. She's 11. Just turned 11. She's got her own little Instagram account called Emmy.Elizabeth, right? And she is absolutely flying with them.
We'll put a link on
She
as well.
is unreal. And that, to me, shows that what we're doing as a team is working.
Definitely,
know
because
what I mean?
you've obviously inspired your daughter.
She's the success won't come calling. You get her on here next.
Special.
Well, that is, we are talking about that, aren't we? About having a kids special, maybe three different kids coming on and maybe doing 20 minutes. So
You'll have to really push her to follow you back. She thinks she's like Kanye West.
it's
Should I follow these back, Dad? And I'm like,
it sounds like
Go on.
she might charge us too much as well.
Credit card on.
John, it's been absolutely inspirational. You're a top man, and to see someone who's been through the challenges you have, but who's reclaimed their life in the way you have, and you've redeveloped this passion. You're looking fantastic. You're in fantastic form, and I think you're going to knock the world over. So
Thank you
everything
very
you've been
much.
talking about in the next 5 years, I think you're going to more than smash it out the park. So thank you very much, John Charles. Brilliant, mate.